What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Philly Sports from the Mighty Kingdom. And yeah, I know it's always hard to have a season end, particularly during a playoff year, and the way it did for the Sixers last night. Of course, they go down in 5 games to Boston. Uh, the difficult part about that series was there were 3 very winnable games that went the other way. Games 2, 3, and 5. Sixers had chances to win those games, had leads late in some of those games, couldn't hold on. I will say this. I want to start by saying that I'm very thankful with the fact that we went from, um, the tanking and the ping pong palooza and all those years. I mean, 2 years ago, this team won 10 games. And it was it was very difficult, obviously to go through those years where you're not making the playoffs, where you're not even just not making the playoffs. Playoffs isn't even in the vocabulary for those years. So we went from those years to a year where we saw the progression, and we actually saw Ben Simmons on the court. We saw the progression of Joel Embiid. We saw, the progression of this process, if you will. And the team wins 52 games, um, makes it to the playoffs as a 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, wins a first round series against the Miami Heat, loses in excruciating fashion. I get that, to the Boston Celtics. By the way, Philly Boston's back. And I think it's great for the NBA that it is, because this is exactly what the NBA needs, is a rivalry, is a deep-rooted rivalry for a number of years. I mean, they have tried to, the NBA in recent years have tried to create rivalries. They go to the finals 3 straight years of Cleveland, Golden State. I mean, those cities really don't hate one another. There's not that deep-rooted, oh my God, we hate them. Sixers Celtics is exactly what the NBA needs. When I was growing up watching sports, and I was too young for the 80s, I'll be 40 in August. I grew up in the 90s NBA. And the Sixers weren't very good for most of those years, but you had the Bulls, you had the Knicks doing battle every year, you had the Pacers when they got involved, of course, with Reggie Miller, the Pacers and the Bulls, the Pacers and the Knicks. You had the Heat get in there for a while. It was awesome. It was great. And that's not even counting some of the rivalries in the Western Conference, when you had the Suns and the Spurs and the Rockets and those guys doing battle. But it wasn't just the playoffs. It was regular season games that were must watch TV because of these hated rivalries with the teams. And there wasn't a lot of joining forces back then. It wasn't like the Bulls kept, the Knicks kept losing to the Bulls, so like Patrick Ewing went to the Bulls. It wasn't that. Um, it was great. It was great theater. It was great drama. It made for great series in the playoffs in particular. And we had great moments. The NBA today, and there are good with it, but the one thing that I always said it lacks is rivalries. I missed it. I mean, you didn't have that chippiness in the playoffs. You didn't have this like hatred for one another. Even teams that played just about every year, you just never got that sense. And maybe part of it was one-sided. I mean, look, the Raptors, they couldn't beat LeBron wherever he was. Um, and I get that, but you just didn't have that hatred, You're going to have that now with the Sixers and Celtics. And maybe that opens the door for some other teams too. And I'm happy for that. I was too young to really appreciate what the Sixers-Celtics rivalry was back in the day, back in the 80s when it was Bird versus Doc, and those series in the playoffs and just, all that came with that. And obviously, this is a rivalry that goes back way further than that, to the Wilt Russell years. And I know the Celtics have got the better of the Sixers most of the time in the playoffs, and really, they have been dominant. They've won more, NBA titles than any other franchise. And I get that. In my lifetime, the Sixers have played, that I'm old enough to watch and appreciate it, the Sixers have lost to the Celtics 3 times now in the playoffs. Um, I am thankful, though, that the Sixers, that, all these just the dark years are behind us. And now we can look forward to this team going forward, having chances to play deep into the playoffs and a chances to go to the finals and to hopefully win a championship, at least one, hopefully more, but at least one. I mean this in all honesty. I do believe, and I know he had a rough series against Boston. I believe Ben Simmons is going to be a very good player in this league. He has to develop a jump shot. There's no doubt about that. That's priority number one. He's got to develop a jumper. Now, is he ever going to be a three-point shooter? No, probably not. You're never going to confuse him with Steph Curry. But he's got to develop a jump shot. And that's an absolute priority for him this offseason for the seasons going forward. Joel Embiid, there are things that he needs to improve. He needs to be better in handling the ball, not turning that ball over. Sometimes he gets the ball and there's two guys around him and they just seem to strip him a lot. He's got to get stronger, in the hands there, just to hang on to that ball. Don't turn it over. And you know what, Joel? I understand that there are times where you can make threes. It's not needed. You need to be down low in the block. I know it's a three-point shooting league. I get that. It's a shooter's league. But he can do so much more down low than obviously he can do. First of all, if he's up top shooting threes, no one's getting rebounds. Okay, no one's getting offensive boards. So Joel's need to stay. I'm not saying just be a statue down there. But I'm saying he can do much more good than not if he just takes advantage of his size and athleticism down low. And a lot of times, if there's matchups where there's a smaller player on him, instead of just taking that player to the hole and dunking on him, he sells for a jump shot. And I know he can shoot pretty good for a big man, but come on, take it down low. They're not going to be able to stop you, and you can get guys in foul trouble. Last night, Al Horford was in foul trouble. And instead of going at Al Horford, it's like they kept shooting. It's like, no, you have one of the Celtics' best players in this series in foul trouble in a game that you got to win. Draw more fouls, get him out of the game. You got to be more aggressive. And I know it's a finesse league and the three-point shooting and everything, but if you got guys, particularly top players on the other team in foul trouble, what are the Celtics going to do to the Sixers if Joel's in trouble? They're going to go right at him. And they did that in this series. So Joel's got to be a little more aggressive. And it's going to come with time. He's young. I think people forget that. People forget that about Simmons and Joel. They're very young. And I'm not using this as an excuse as to why they lost, because Boston had some young players too. Obviously Tatum. But there are lessons learned in this series, and hopefully this team can learn these lessons. I don't think it's not easy. Losing a series like that. I mean, the Celtics were undermanned. Some of their players were out. We were on such a roll with this team. We were hoping this can go far, but it's a lesson learned. It's a series lesson learned on how this team has to get better. And as a fan, that's all you want, is you want your team to grow. It sucks to lose. Losing is the hardest thing to do, but with losing sometimes, when you lose, you get the win. Because you learn things about your team, you learn things about the players and about themselves, where they have to grow, particularly young players, where they have to grow. So that was a tough one. I will say this, though. I'm glad they made it into the playoffs this year. They gave us a fun year. Did it end great? No. But at the same point, it's leaps and bounds from where they were. And I'm excited for the future. I really am. I think my generation and the younger generations, I know for us in this town, we were just ingrained in our brains to hate Dallas and to hate, Sidney Crosby and the Penguins. And yeah, that's been like the big thing, right? Well, now, as it was with the older generations, got to learn to hate Boston for the Celtics, certainly. Really all their teams, but for the Celtics more than anything, because that is going to be the team. That's the team that's right there. If the Sixers got to get to the finals, they're going to have to go through Boston year after year after year. This is going to be one of the best rivalries. These two teams are going to face off many years, and some of those series are going to go our way, and some of those series aren't. But to get to the finals for the next 5 to 7 to 8 years, however long it is, it goes through Boston and Philly. That's what it is in the Eastern Conference. LeBron more than likely will not be on Cleveland after this year. We'll see. As a Sixers fan, I've said this before, And I'll say this again. If he shakes loose from Cleveland, we got to get him. There are too many good reasons that outweigh the negatives of why the Sixers need to get LeBron James. And first and foremost reason is he's a mentor. You talk about some of the young players and some of the problems that we had in that series against Boston. It was put on display against Boston. And look, that team is very well coached. They play a hard-nosed defense. They're very talented. And you have another team in the Sixers who are very talented and maybe on paper even more talented than that Boston team was without Kyrie and Hayward on the court. But the fact that Boston just played that type of defense, they knew how to finish games. And the Sixers' biggest problem, and it didn't really show itself against Miami, but certainly against Boston, was finishing games, close games, where the difference between a win and a loss is almost like coin flip. You got to make those plays at the end of the fourth quarter or in overtime to win those games. And they didn't do it. And you get LeBron, a guy who's been in the finals 7 straight years. If he wins against Boston, by the way, go Cavs. But if he wins against Boston, 8 straight years he's been in the finals. And I know his finals record isn't the most glowing, but he knows how to get there. And that whatever team he's on knows how to win those type of games, those close games, gritty games that enable you to get to that next level. And yeah, he lost in the finals. I get that. I mean, Golden State, San Antonio, sometimes there's just no shame losing to teams like that, when they were at their peak. And I know the one year they lost to Dallas, but they had Dirk and Jason Kidd, 2 Hall of Famers. I mean, what can you do sometimes? Sometimes the other team's going to win. But LeBron's still a great player. He still has a number of great years ahead of him, even though he's at an older age. He's still dominant. And he's exactly what this team needs. Another superstar, but not only another superstar, but one that knows how to prepare in the offseason, how to take care of your body so you're ready for the grind of a regular season, 82-game regular season, and then in the playoffs. Playoffs is a whole other animal. Not only is it a long run, but you're playing the same team for at most 7 games. So you got to be ready. You got to be prepared. And you got to do the little things at the end of those games to win. And not only win those games, but to win series. LeBron's a great closer. Maybe he wasn't always this, in his career. But in the last how many years, he has been one of the best closers you can find in the sport. Making last-second shots, a defensive play, setting a teammate up. He's just so good at doing that. He coming here would be exactly the same thing. And those losses that they had against the Celtics in those 3 games, they're all wins if LeBron's on the court. If LeBron is here right now, if he's on the Sixers, and let's just hypothetical, he's on the Sixers, they beat the Celtics. They don't lose those games that they lost. They don't give up a 22-point lead, even though it was on the road. They don't give that lead up if LeBron's here. The games that they lost, the close games, the inbound plays, LeBron doesn't make that mistake. Again, not only is he doing the right things, he's showing these other younger players how to do the right things. He's a coach on the court. All due respect to Brett Brown. He's a coach on the court, which is something that they kind of lacked. And you saw that in this series. All due respect to the players who are out there, but you didn't have that exactly. And they folded in those games. Take nothing away from the Celtics and what they were able to do. But the Sixers they're still a piece away, okay? And to all the Sixer fans who are like poo-pooing this, may I ask you a question? Would you rather Robert Covington continue to be the starter or LeBron James? Because that's who he would replace in the starting lineup. I mean, come on. Rocco, okay, he should be on the bench. He should be coming off the bench. He should not be a starter. Way too many mistakes. Way too inconsistent with his offensive game as well. You need a more consistent player as a starter. Enter LeBron James. And I think it's a perfect fit. I really do. I mean, people say, he's too ball dominant. I mean, you don't think he can change? You don't think he can adapt where he goes? How many years has he been in the league? He's not a young player anymore. Even some of the comments that he made recently, he wants to, change the game a little bit, so he wants to go to a team where there's more of a facilitator on the court with him. Ben Simmons. is that guy. Now you can say, well, Houston has that, and Chris Paul, and the Lakers might have that, Lonzo Ball. Well, if he goes to the Lakers, he still needs to bring another piece or so with him. Here we already have two players that are going to be very good for a number of years in Simmons and Embiid, and we don't know what we have in Fultz yet, and we'll see. The jury's still out there. But you have at least a guaranteed, you have Simmons and you have Embiid. All LeBron has to do is come here. Doesn't even have to bring anyone. He doesn't have to recruit. And I know he's the Nick Saban of the NBA, but he doesn't have to recruit here. He comes here, he's the final piece. He goes to LA, he still has to recruit. Even Houston, he might have to still recruit Paul George to go there. I mean, I don't know. And Cleveland's cap problems, I mean, how many other players are they going to be able to get? So I will say this. If he decides to stay in Cleveland, that's his right. I mean, that's his home. If he wants to do the reverse of the decision those years ago when he went to Miami and this time actually stay in Cleveland, that's his right. That's his decision. But with the fact that he still butts heads with the owner, Dan Gilbert, the fact that Cleveland does have restraints as far as financial problems, a lot of signs are just showing that he is going to exit again. And, Philly has been one of the teams that's been rumored as one of the teams he wants to go to. Out of the Eastern Conference, if he doesn't stay on Cleveland, it's the team he wants to go to. And honestly, if I'm LeBron James, I go to Philly because not only do you stay in the Eastern Conference, which I know the West has, some potential landing spots there, Houston, LA, but you still got to deal with Golden State. And not saying he's not saying that competitively you never want to go somewhere where there's another team, but you still have to deal with that monster, out in the West. If he comes to the East, if he stays in the East, comes to Philly, here's the other thing, the Sixers and Celtics are a rivalry. I mean, that's going to be there, but Kyrie's on the Celtics. So you don't think that he wants to, still be on the East and be on a team with a chance to beat Kyrie every year? I mean, again, it makes sense. It does. And as a Sixers fan, I really don't see it as a cop-out if they get him. I see that as the move a la what the Sixers did back in 1982, and they were further along in their process than this team is when they got Moses Malone. Why did they get Moses Malone? Because the Sixers had problems with two teams back then. They had problems with the Lakers in the finals whenever they got to the finals, and to get to the finals, they had problems with the Celtics. Now, first and foremost, you had to beat the Celtics to get to the finals. And after you got to the finals, you more than likely had to play the Lakers. And those are two teams that the Sixers had trouble beating in those years. So they go out, they get Moses Malone. Not only do they get to the finals, they sweep Boston in 4, and then they sweep the Lakers in the finals in 4, and Moses was a huge reason why. That team was already talented. They already had Dr. J, they had Maurice Cheeks, they had Bobby Jones, they had good players, but they just needed that extra piece, that one final piece to the puzzle to put them over the top. Now, they only won the one title with that team in 1983, which is the last championship in franchise history, but they needed that. Even though they already had a lot of talent, they were talented enough to get to the finals, but to do the whole thing, to get past the Celtics and then past the Lakers, they needed that one extra piece, and that one extra piece was Moses Malone. And fast forward, here we are in 2018, and even though it's just getting started, you know what Boston's going to have. And they're going to have that for another how many years. They also are going to get two of their two All-Stars back in the lineup next year who were hurt, Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. So they're going to get them. And Danny Ainge, as much as we hate him, he's always thinking of the next move, so they could possibly get another player. I mean, maybe some talk with him on radio, and I agree with it. What if they trade away the pick they got from the Sixers this past offseason, which was the Kings pick, and you parlay that with Rozier, and you send that over to San Antonio, you get Kawhi Leonard. So now you got to deal with that on top of it. So it's really important for the Sixers to make this move. If LeBron shakes loose from Cleveland, you got to get him. And I don't care what other fans say. It doesn't matter to me. It's the right move. Again, culture, teaching these young kids, on this team, this is how you gotta play, and this is how you gotta condition yourself in an offseason to get through the regular season healthy. And then to get through the regular season, then you got to get through the playoffs. And okay, if Boston's doing this, you know it's going to be a physical series. So mentally, you got to be there and you got to be able to finish games. When games are there to be won, you got to finish them. And this team couldn't do that. And even going forward, they may still have problems with that if they don't get that number 23 to come here. Is anything a given? No. I mean, LeBron can come here, players can get hurt, and, we're out in the second round again. I mean, you never know. Things can happen. But to me, there's as far as probability, there's a much more greater probability of this team succeeding, beating Boston, than going to the finals, probably against Golden State. I mean, that team isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So you got Golden State to deal with. It's almost like the 80s when you had the Celtics and the Lakers. Okay? You have those two beasts that you have to slay to win a championship. More than likely, unless something crazy happens and Boston loses in the first round and the Warriors lose. I don't know. But more times than not, you're going to have to face those two teams to win a championship. And LeBron and this team makes them that much more better and more greater a chance to do it. And I understand people are worried, well, what happens if he leaves? Then we're in bad shape. No, we're not. Because you still have Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and we'll see about Fultz, still in the prime of their career. And as long as they don't go anywhere, you're still in good shape. Okay? And then there's the school of thought that well, what if he tries to make trades and everything? Well, again, like I said before, this is where the brain trust of the Sixers have to be stronger. And they cannot allow LeBron to try to make trades and, kind of say, this is my team now. That can't happen. I mean, the one thing I will say about LeBron, I think he's a great athlete. He's one of the all-time greatest athletes. I mean, he just is on the court. But off the court, being a GM, yeah, not so much. Never really makes a lot of great moves. So I wouldn't trust LeBron the GM. I would certainly trust LeBron the player. And I've been beating the drum to get him here all throughout the year, all throughout the time. Whenever you think there's a chance, I just want him here. I do. I want to be great. I want to take that next step. I've tasted it now in the playoffs. I want to get past that hurdle. That's going to be that team, that green team in Boston. Okay, and I want to I want to go further. I want this team to succeed. And it's not a slight on Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, but I know what LeBron brings. And if he comes here, he'll bring that mentality here, the same as he did in Miami, the same he did in Cleveland. It's that mentality. And I want that. You must excuse me. I'm a fan. I want that. I know we're going to have to deal with Boston, and I know that's going to be the team that, again, the Sixers have got to find a way to beat that team. And I think if you get a LeBron, your chances are that much greater that you can do that. And the Celtics are still going to be great. They're still going to be there. And again, this rivalry, and again, these younger generation, Sixers and Philly fans, gotta learn. I know it's Dallas. I know it's Pittsburgh for the Penguins. It's Boston. And that's how it is in the NBA. You gotta learn to hate that team. Okay? I know we love green. For football, you can't love green for basketball. Okay? Hide your green during those games, okay? I mean, a Super Bowl shirt's okay. But, don't wear green during those Sixers Celtics games for the most part if you can avoid it. It was disappointing. It definitely was. But like I said, I don't think it should overshadow the greater picture. And the greater picture is this team took a great step forward this year. They did. And they will continue to take steps. And I don't know what the draft, I don't know if they're going to trade that pick or whatever. Maybe they get a good player in the draft. They get another good young player. I mean, Michael Bridges out of Villanova obviously could be a possibility there. But we'll see. Still a long way to go before the draft, and we'll see what they do, if they still have the pick or if they move the pick to get a player. I don't know, but that still has to be seen, and obviously the free agency. And see, now the Sixers are in play, aren't they? Right, all these years that they weren't in play, and this is the other part of the process. I've said this before, but this is the other part of the process that a lot of Sixer fans forget. You go through that to get those players in the draft, so that you're a player in free agency. To get those superstar type free agents to want to come here. Not only are they enticed to come here because of the other players to play with, but look at the atmosphere. Wells Fargo Center is one of the best atmospheres right now for basketball. And this is a great basketball town. I mean, this is a very knowledgeable basketball town. This is a town that loves their hoops. We've just been waiting on the Sixers to get good for a long time. And you see the difference. Now that place is packed. It's a great atmosphere. It's loud. It's noisy. Other players see this, and that's like that in the regular season too. So other players see that and they say, that'd be fun to join that. It's all part of it. This is all part of the process. So yes, having those young, budding stars on the team certainly entices those superstar type players to want to come here. But it's the atmosphere too, and yeah, money helps. Which this team certainly. I will say this: when it comes to beating Boston, maybe they didn't do it on the court, but they can do it financially because they're more better off financially than the Celtics are right now. So the Sixers should be able to land one of these superstar type players, max contract type players, whether it's LeBron, whether it's Paul George. Do you make a trade for Kawhi Leonard? Do you wait a year till he's a free agent, unless he goes somewhere and they sign him long term? We'll see. To me, Kawhi Leonard's probably the least chance of getting because you would have to give up a lot to get him. And I don't know if they have all the pieces to give up like another team. Like I said, I mean, Rozier is a pretty enticing player to get in a trade, and the Celtics have a little more probably to give the Spurs. So my guess is that Kawhi Leonard doesn't come here, but you never know. There is that Spurs connection. Brett Brown came from the Spurs system. He knows Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi knows him. Kawhi's apparently worked with some of the Sixers doctors. So I don't know. There's some connections there, and it's a comfort level thing. If Kawhi feels he's better off here, obviously the package has to be good for the Sixers to give to the Spurs, but he's going to want to push to come here, and we'll see. I would love to get Kawhi Leonard. I would love to get LeBron and Kawhi. Hey, I'm greedy. I don't care. I'll take them all. If it means my team's winning, I don't care what other people say. Doesn't matter to me. I am excited for the future. I'm glad that this Sixers-Celtics rivalry is back, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. It's going to make it even that much more fun and interesting during the regular season, those matchups, and then, of course, in the playoffs. There's work to be done. The team took a step, and ultimately it ended in disappointing fashion. But they did take a step, and we must not lose track of that. They did take a big step this year. No more tanking, no more ping pong balls. Now it's about making the playoffs and then advancing in the playoffs to play for championships. That's what it's about, and that's the onus on this organization right now, is to put a team on the court that can compete with Boston, that can beat Boston, because that's the team. Unless LeBron stays in Cleveland, that's the team that you have to beat for the foreseeable future. They have a good collection of young talent and veterans, and we still haven't seen Irving and Hayward, playing in the postseason there. So they still have that. The Sixers got to match it, and I believe they will. I think they're going to be very aggressive this offseason, try to get one of these players or two to come here. Some of the players maybe to bring back, like a J.J. Redick. Maybe they go ahead and do that. There are moves to be made, and we have to put all of our trust and faith right now in Colangelo and the front office to make those moves, to make this team that much more better. We also have to put our faith in Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid and Markelle Fultz, that they grow as young players. I mean, they have star potential. They have superstar potential. They do. They have to grow. It's those mistakes that they made in this series against Boston, they got to learn from it. It's a learning experience sometimes. Losing, you don't know what it is to win until you lose. When you lose, that's how you learn how to win. And in this town, we certainly know all about that. I'm excited for the future. I am. I know it's disappointing. I was frustrated as anything watching this series because those games were so winnable. If they just could have made one or two extra plays, they would have won the series. But I I'm also going to, not be one of those fans that say, oh, it was a complete disaster. It wasn't. It was a success because they made the playoffs. They won a round. They showed us what this team is capable of doing. Now they just got to put it all together, bring in that extra superstar or stars to help this team over the hump a la 1982 when the Sixers brought in Moses Malone. That is what this front office has got to do. Listen, as a fan, we have nothing. We're not on the court. We're not on the ice or the field. All we do is watch the games. And being a fan is a difficult thing because we invest so much time and effort and money into these teams. But the payoff is something like that. That is what it means. When you go through years after years after years of not, winning, of not, getting that ultimate prize, and other fan bases always, thumbing their nose at you, and all these, the trolls on YouTube or all the Twitter and all that, telling you what you're never going to have, and then your team goes out and they do it. That's the payoff. That's the prize. It's a hard thing to do. Even for the cities that seem to win all the time, it's a hard thing to do. Winning championship in professional sports is one of the hardest things anyone can do. It's hard. It takes a lot of sacrifice. It takes a lot of luck. It takes a lot of effort, and it's a very difficult thing to do. But when you see it and when you get it done, that's what makes it all worth it. That's what makes all the hours of watching the team, all the money spent on the merchandise and on game tickets, all the hours of making videos here on YouTube. That is the payoff. That's what it's all about. Okay? And the Sixers still have work to do to get it. But they can do it. They can certainly do it. Just got to make the right moves. And hope to have a little luck along the way. But yes, being a fan, you invest so much of yourself for the team. And there's that old saying that how much of you love this team do they ever love you back? And for those teams that seem to go forever without winning, that's the old adage. But to me, the most important thing, being a fan, is not just championships, yes, but it's perseverance. You got to persevere through a lot. Most of the time, your team's not going to come out on top. I mean, the same teams don't win every year, even though sometimes it seems like some teams do. They don't. There's a lot of failure that comes in sports. And it's how you persevere through that as a fan that makes you better as a fan. That's what it's about. That's the most important word I always say that being a fan is. It's perseverance. It's dealing with it's riding that roller coaster of the ups and downs. And of course, me being here in the Philly area, being a Philadelphia sports fan, we have a reputation, and I always, you hear these people talking about us, and I always say this, is that those people who say these things about us, the one thing they all have in common is they don't live here. They're not part of the fabric of this community. They don't understand it. They see us as these evil ogres, out there. They like to just boo people and everything. Well, I mean, they're not here. They don't live this. I live this. And part of the reason I started making my videos for the Eagles, as being an Eagles fan on YouTube, is I wanted to show people what it is to be a fan, at least of one of our teams. And now I'm trying to, have a series for all of these, for these teams. Of course, the Eagles will always have their own separate, series, the Season of the Fan series. But I think that we go above and beyond sometimes because we have been let down so many times by these teams. And I think you have to grow that thick skin to be a fan in this area of these teams because you have to deal with a whole lot and a lot of adversity, and you have to persevere through it. And I think these fans have done it. I mean, you go through what we went through with the Sixers, these how many years in a row of ping pong palooza and tanking, all those years, winning few games, with the hope that we can draft these guys and they're going to produce into something. Again, that's why I say that this season ultimately ended in disappointment, but it was a success. It was taking that next step. Seeing what this team, they can get to the playoffs and they can make some noise in there. They won a round, could have won a second round. If they could have just made those plays, they would have been past Boston and playing against LeBron and the Cavs. in the Eastern Finals, but it wasn't meant to be. I'm still excited, like I said, for the future, and as a fan, it's about perseverance. It's about going through times like this so you can get something like that. Okay, that's what it's about, and I wouldn't rather be a fan of any other team. I'm proud to be a fan of these teams. Yeah, they let me down a lot, but I wouldn't want to be another. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, and I wouldn't want to be a fan of anyone else. When push comes to shove, I love where I live. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of being in a city with the type of history that we have. I'm proud of being around fans who have passion. Maybe over passion at times, but passion, because that's what it's about. Caring and it's got to mean something. And in some cases, maybe sometimes it means a little too much. But it's got to mean something. You got to be proud of where you are. You got to be proud of your teams, and you get on them. They're like a family member. You get on your family members too. But like I said, I wouldn't rather it any other way. I really wouldn't. So I am excited, for the future with the Sixers. I hope and hope and hope that they can get LeBron. And if they can't get LeBron, maybe a Paul George. Maybe even get Paul George, trade for Kawhi Leonard if possible. There are improvements that this team has to make, and let's go ahead and make them. Briefly, I want to touch on the Phillies. They've been playing better, although they're losing 3-0 right now. Top of the second. The game's not on TV. It's one of those damn Facebook games or whatever. But I see the score right here. It's 3-0 Giants in the top of the second. The Phillies won the first 3 games in the series, so they've been playing pretty good. They're about a game out of first place with those Atlanta Braves. Who would have thought by at this point in May it would be the Braves and the Phillies in the NL East, right? I know the Nationals are playing better, so they're going to still be a team to deal with. And the Mets, even though they're kind of up and down. But I'm, look, now that the basketball season ended, and of course we're still a little ways away from football, and hockey obviously ended. We got baseball in front of us, and I'm happy that the Phillies are in some sort of contention right now, and I do believe they're going to keep it going. I don't think that this is something that they're just going to fall off a cliff. They have good enough pitching. Their lineup is a good enough lineup to get some runs, and they're fun. They're fun to watch. They're a young team. And yes, as a young team, they do make mistakes from time to time. But it's a fun team to watch, and it's a fun team to cheer for. And I know we've gone, talk about the Sixers with all those years they didn't make the playoffs. We've gone a little ways from the Phillies, too, last time they made the playoffs. And they could be in contention this year, if not for a division title, certainly for a wild card spot. And you know what? If it holds us over, until we get football season ramped back up again. Not that there's ever an off season for football, but it's all the more better. It's much better to have a baseball team in contention throughout the summer than to kind of have a winter summer, if you will, where there's really no hope for the baseball team and you're just counting the days until kickoff, like we've had to do in years past. So I'm glad that the Phillies are playing well. I like this young town. I like, some of these players are starting to become household, names. So it's good to have that again. And, I'm happy with how they're playing, although I wish they would play better within the division. It's crazy. They're so good outside the division when they play, and then they have a division series and they lose 2 or 3 or something like that. Of course, they're playing the Mets this weekend at home, which is a big series coming up. Starts tomorrow evening. And like I said, I'm excited for this team and going forward. I think they're in a good spot. They still need some help, but I think they'll be in contention throughout the summer. And to have meaningful baseball games in August and September is a great thing. So let's go Phillies and Sixers. Big offseason. This is one of the biggest offseasons in the franchise history. Big moves to make. Maybe one big move, but maybe more. Depending on how many of these players they can land this offseason. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. I'm glad that the Sixers have turned things around and are going to be spoken as far as one of the teams that can compete in the Eastern Conference for the next how many years. It's exciting. This is only the beginning. I know it was very disappointing losing the way we did to the hated Celtics, but you know what? If that brings the rivalry back, that brings the rivalry back. And make no mistake, it's about Philly Boston right now, Eastern Conference. That's what it is. It's an arms race, and we got to keep up with them. And then maybe someday another banner can be hung up here for our 10-9-8 76ers. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for watching. I know I've been about 40 minutes. I usually do. Tough series loss. There were games that could have been wins that were losses. Learn from it, grow from it, Sixers. Let's get those series, coming up in the years to come. Let's get LeBron if he becomes out there, or Paul George or someone. They need another player. They need another star on this team. So let's go out and get that big offseason. Of course, I'll have videos, during the offseason. We'll break it all down. And, of course, for the Phillies, too, keep it up, Phils. Hopefully they can come back and win this game. 3-0 second inning, but hopefully they can, come back and keep the winning ways going. And big series over the weekend against those Mets. Let's win the division series. Come on, guys. I know they can do it. Aside from that, let's go Soul, let's go Union. And, of course, hey, it's getting closer and closer, isn't it, to the next season? And for the first time in franchise history, the Eagles are the defending Super Bowl champions. So, yes, a lot of exciting things coming up here in Philly. It's a great time to be a Philadelphia sports fan, despite how that series ended against the Celtics. Great things to come in the future. And I'll be here every step of the way with all of you. All right, everyone. See you in the next vid. Take care.